Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're still in the thick of it, the mid-1930s with John Ford, and joining me for this episode is my friend Paige. Paige, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I would do anything for a good friend like you.
Including keep coming back and talking about John Ford movies. And This week we're going to be talking about Mary of Scotland. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it is another film in the UK that seems like John Ford makes 3 movies. Or 4 movies. You got Westerns, gangster movies, Confederate sympathy movies, and, Irish/UK films. And this certainly is one of them, and it is a period piece, obviously, as it's about Mary, Queen of Scotland. But we'll be getting to that. But if you haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments. We start with coming attractions for the week of January 19th. We're also in the thick of January. And then we'll get to our feature film, and then some recommendations for you. Mm-hmm. But coming out this weekend is an interesting mix. You have some thrillers. You have some straight to streaming films coming out. It's January, nothing too big, but Paige, what film piqued your fancy the most coming out for this weekend?
It's called Cult Killer.
Cult Killer.
It's about, it's like peak white woman crap. It's like serial killer, true crime, cult, Antonio Banderas.
Yes. That's the only reason I care. Antonio Banderas is in it. So
he also, I was about to say, he plays Shrek. He does not play Shrek. He plays Puss in Boots.
Puss in Boots.
Yeah.
He sure does.
He sure does.
And we better get Shrek 5. On a side note. And Puss in Boots 3.
We gotta get Shrek. There's 2 Puss in Boots?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They're like 10 years apart though.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is an amazing movie. Blew me away.
The Last Wish? That sounds so deep. It's a Shrek movie.
No, there's a lot more depth in this Puss in Boots movie than you would expect. The first one's fine, I guess, but we'll find out if Cult Killer is or not. I have a sinking feeling Antonio Banderas is in this movie for 10 minutes. And
yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be one of those kinds of VOD thrillers and stuff like that. But here's the thing, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't make that judgment. My most anticipated film, which is I.S.S., which is a new thriller where the world is under nuclear war now, and the Americans and the Russians on the International Space Station are given orders to take out the other group and sabotage their efforts of getting home.
Not take them out to dinner, kill them.
Take them out.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's a really competently made thriller. It has a solid cast of Ariana DeBose, Pilo Iceback, who's in a lot of things like Ghost in the Shell, the live action one.
Okay.
He's a douche pirate from Game of Thrones, Euron Greyjoy.
Okay.
Which Euron Greyjoy is supposed to be an evil killer, and they made him a douche pirate who wants to cuck Jaime Lannister. And also John Gallagher Jr. and Chris Messina. So some good actors that don't usually get a big spotlight. I actually did watch it last night, and it's actually a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely the one out of this weekend that seemed like it was the most interesting. Mm-hmm. Founders Day is, I feel like it just feels like a cheap ripoff of Thanksgiving that came out back at Thanksgiving. It's just another holiday slasher film that looks like a pilgrim's killing people. So
Pilgrims did kill people.
Yeah, they sure did.
Native American people.
That was more genocidal, not.
That's true. Yeah, it's a
less
type
slasher.
Of no, not cute.
Yeah, not exactly that.
No.
But what we're really here to talk about is the John Ford film from 1936, Mary of Scotland. And a little bit of backstory for you. So this is indeed about the 16th century ruler Mary, Queen of Scotland. It is starring Katharine Hepburn before she became a big star. This film is adapted from the 1933 Maxwell Anderson play, in which Friedrich March actually plays Bothwell in the play and then reprises his role for this film. So that's fun. That stuff still happens. like Renee Rapp for like Mean Girls, the musical. She got to be in the film.
It's the same thing. It's the same exact type of movie.
I didn't say the movies were the same. I said the casting decision was the same.
I know.
Paige. And then Ginger Rogers did actually test for the role of Mary and was rejected by RKO. They thought it would be bad for her image, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why, but okay.
I guess because like Ginger Rogers was like a sex symbol at the time. It was just like,
I guess that's true.
Yeah, playing Mary of Scotland's not exactly like the sexiest of roles.
No.
And they're just like, well, we'll give you Katharine Hepburn. Doing a very vague Scottish accent.
She was not even doing a Scottish accent.
Vague at best.
It was, at best, yes.
And then some others sounded like Sean Connery or close to Fat Bastard level.
It was all
Scottish.
A mix of levels of
Scottish. There was certainly a mix of levels of Scottish accents.
For sure.
This was indeed considerably not historically accurate. As, according to Wikipedia, this film really portrays Mary as a wronged martyr. I guess I don't know history well enough to know if that's not correct or not. But, I don't know. I kind of got that vibe from Mary of Queen of Scots as well. The one with Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie in it. And here, they talked about her being an actual heir to Henry VII, which she wasn't. Actually, apparently. So, yes.
They talked about Mary, Queen of Scots being an heir to Henry VII?
According to notes.
Okay.
And then this was indeed the second straight box office bomb of Katharine Hepburn's career, causing RKO to lose faith in her and let her leave, and then she became a giant star, and they regretted it.
Womp womp.
So, lesson learned, don't give up on Katharine Hepburn. But...
That's useful knowledge for us in 2024. But I guess you're right. You're not wrong.
You don't give up on talent that easy,
no,
I guess.
That's true. So true,
Just,
bestie.
I guess, give her the roles that she needs. Like, the Philadelphia Story that became such a big hit. Have you seen that?
Is it with Tom Hanks?
Philadelphia has Tom Hanks in it.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia Story
I have not.
Has
I
Cary Grant. That is the true Philadelphia Story. And Jimmy Stewart in it, in which Katharine Hepburn gets punched in the face within the first 2 minutes of the movie. Really? And she's like sitting on the ground like oh, gosh darn. And I'm like, what the hell did they make movies about in the 30s?
She has a traumatic brain injury now. Like, if you get punched in the skull, you're going to get a traumatic brain injury.
It's just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, but...
It was kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, well, what a movie we're getting ready to... But that's not this one. Katharine Hepburn was not punched in the face, from what I can tell, watching this movie. But, Paige, what are your general thoughts on Mary of Scotland?
Yeah, so the thing I immediately noticed with Mary of Scotland is, like, the costumes. So, like, Tudor era England is kind of like, I'm interested in that. So I'm not an expert by any means. I could be getting things wrong. So I really like this historical fashion YouTuber, Bernadette Manor. You should watch her videos. They're so cool. And she often reviews movies for their historical accuracy and costuming. And she says something which I thought was really interesting. I'm paraphrasing, but like, she says she would rather have a movie that it kind of gives the vibes of the era versus one that's like super historically accurate, but like doesn't not isn't aesthetically pleasing, but maybe just doesn't add to the story as much. So, long-winded way of really saying that I don't think the costumes were like super historically accurate, but I do think you could tell the designers paid enough attention to the detail. They added enough historical details that I thought it worked. I thought it suited the theatrical nature of the movie, because as you said, it was adapted from a play. We're not aiming for like 100% realism, historical accuracy here. So I was actually surprised. I was like, okay, like this looks way better than I thought it would. And I also, as you mentioned before with the portrayal in this movie of Mary as a total martyr and Elizabeth is just like this absolute bitch.
Yep.
I don't think either is true. I don't
Probably
think
not.
Mary was not an innocent martyr. Elizabeth was not an evil bitch. Like, the truth, as it so often is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, like, the scene you get introduced to Elizabeth, it's like, just screams, villain! And it's just like, of course. And, like, the only times you ever see her is her just sitting grumpy and angry at a table.
Or, like, horny towards the Scottish ambassador for a couple scenes. That was really odd. His name's Throckmorton. It's like, would you date someone named Throckmorton?
I do agree that the costuming really stands out in terms of really creating the atmosphere of the film, and then the production designs, interesting mix of like really well made set design along with a lot of matte paintings depending on like, ooh, look, it's a castle. It was obviously a matte painting.
Yeah.
And being able to like create those kinds of things to create this world, and especially when you're doing a period piece, unless you're doing something where you're trying to like mix it with modernization, like you want to get it as right as possible. And to be fair, the Mary Queen of Scots film that we got in 2018 also like put a lot of detail into the costuming and design and stuff like that. Unfortunately for me, like this film, outside the technical elements, like there's some really cool like, there's like one particular shot of Knox, who's like this guy who's not about Mary at all.
He's not
like,
about Catholicism. Yeah, it's really odd.
There's like a high angle shot of him like screaming and
like when he's standing on the stairs, like,
and then the light shot up at him and you see like the dark shadows on his face. John Ford was a really good director.
It's good.
You have a lot of close-ups of Katharine Hepburn where she has to do a lot of emoting to really get across what John Ford's trying to say with the shot. So technically, and then like there's some pretty impressive, like there's a lot of there's a scene, big musical number towards the beginning of the film where there's a lot of extras and like there's
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
it was
there's
so
like
long.
scale. It kind of got drowned out by like the 50 different times they played bagpipes in the movie, which still wasn't enough. I was not convinced this was Scottish.
Are you being sarcastic?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Was not convinced this was Scotland at all.
Well, that's true, because the Scottish accents were just whatever they
all
felt
over
like.
the place. There's kilts and there are bagpipes, of course. It's Scotland, apparently. It's one of those kinds of things where there's interesting shots of, like, there's one shot of Mary and Bothwell on horses, and, like, how the camera pans and everything, capturing the action. It's like, you can tell John Ford's a really talented director.
Yeah.
But a lot of this film just feels like a very by-the-numbers, like, biopic kind of period piece that I don't really feel like it does too many interesting things with the story. It gets really caught up in romantic melodrama, like really bad pettiness. Like, do I have to be like Bothwell being like, I'm a man?
Yeah, I'm not some gay dude like your second husband. It's like, what? Like,
which is, like, one of them is very obviously gay-coded. Like,
very
obviously. Like, this is the 1930s, like, just make him...
is he, you know...
gay.
Scottish?
Yeah. And it's just, like, it gets really bogged down a lot of that stuff. There are a couple of scenes that really did stand out to me. When they finally had, like, Mary and Elizabeth come face to face, that was a really well shot, really well acted scene. But at that point, I really didn't care. Like, do I care that Mary's the Queen of Scotland at this point in the movie?
Like, is she even at this? No, James the First.
Well, yeah, it's like, obviously, like, her whole entire motivation was to have the crown of England. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, by the end of this movie, I'm like, I never really felt invested. It felt like it was more of like, okay, there's some cool scenes here and there, really well acted scenes, really well shot scenes. Like, she's being interrogated at the end with these men on this, like, really high up, like, obscenely high. Like,
She used to practically go like this to,
they're like,
to talk
we're
to them.
judging you. And,
Like, we're judging, like, we're hammering that home visually.
and it's like those kinds of things stand out, but a lot of the story just gets bogged down in just, like, tedious romantic BS. There's no depth or complexity or shades of gray to Elizabeth. It's just like...
Or Mary, or anyone.
Well, like, that's fair. So, like, Mary's very much like, this is Mary. Like, one dimension, and then one dimension Elizabeth, who's just mean and evil. And it's just like, that doesn't make for an interesting story.
And it's, again, also not accurate because people are not cartoon villains, like,
yeah,
generally.
This isn't pro wrestling where it's like, oh my god, it's the baby face and the heel. But
oh my god, Mary Queen of Scots versus Elizabeth the First.
That's how they should have handled it.
I would have liked that a lot more than what we got.
It's like, oh my god, Mary gets the chair.
Mary gets the throne.
My god.
Mary gets the scepter.
She power bombs Elizabeth onto the throne. See, that would have been more interesting and engaging and exciting. But by the end, a lot of it, like, you could really feel this was a play. And they didn't do a great job of trying to make it not feel like a play.
Yeah, it was. That's when you told me that, you're like, oh, this is adapted from a play. I was like, oh yeah, that tracks. Like, there's a lot. I mean, he gets some good spicy shots in, but it's pretty static.
Well, and the thing is, like, I've seen plenty of Shakespeare adaptations where they do some really interesting things.
Sure.
You know, like Kenneth Branagh's 4-hour Hamlet. Like, he's doing some crazy shit with it. And it works, and it's exciting, and it's interesting. You gotta keep that attention for 4 hours. But this felt like it was lacking in trying to make it more dynamic. But in the end, like, this feels like more middle of the road of the John Ford films I've seen so far. It's not quite... It doesn't feel like, what did I just watch? Like a couple of the ones that we watched.
Like the early ones. I was like, what is this? Like,
and it's not, like, horribly dated in its perspectives.
Other than the gay making fun of people for being effeminate.
Fair. So, no, it is pretty... Yeah. It's still... They just chose to, like, there's no black people in it. So there's no room for John Ford to have horrible caricatures of black people in it.
So that's nice. It's nice.
But it definitely doesn't hit the kind of dynamic films that some of his other ones, especially... He's had a couple of films up to this point that, like, won Best Picture, or he won Best Director for. This is definitely not one.
Yeah.
But Paige, do you have any other thoughts about Mary of Scotland?
Yeah, I think that I've watched so many John Ford movies than I ever wanted to, and I'm noticing a theme with him. And also, maybe this is because cinema was still in its infancy, toddlerhood perhaps at this point, but he cannot make a tight story. He does not know when to trim things. He does not know how to make something concise. Like, if he'll drag out... I mean, I know he probably doesn't write the scripts, but, like, he drags it the fuck out. It's like, this man needs to know when to trim things down, and I'll be interested to see if he ever, like, learns that, like, maybe not everything needs to be 1,000,000 years long.
Yeah, this is actually his longest film up to this point, which is... I think this is the only film that I've watched so far of his that actually cracked 2 hours.
Yeah, it was a little, like, a minute over 2 hours.
And it felt it.
It really did. But all of his movies feel super... They all drag. Like, I mean, I've only seen a handful of them, but I've really felt like all of them drag. So maybe he learns and gets a little more concise.
I'm starting to realize that he had a very inconsistent career. Especially, like, up to this point. It'll be interesting once I get into the late 30s where, like, Stagecoach came out. And, like, Grapes of Wrath started coming out. Stuff like that. But for now, it's still like, wow, you came out with 3 movies this year, and one of them's like an Oscar-worthy film, one of them is like passable, and this other one's like, what the hell were you making?
Did he do a lot of drugs? Did he drink a lot? Heavy drinker?
I think so. The drinking, probably.
I was gonna say, that, like, there's something going on with this guy.
He's also womanizing a lot.
In my professional opinion. Well, everyone was a thought back then in Hollywood. Indeed.
But Paige, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
Okay. This is like, speaking of peak white woman shit, like we talked about Cult Killer in the beginning. If you have not seen the HBO Max documentary Love Has Won, you should definitely check it out. I am a huge, like, problematic true crime girly, and this documentary, like, I felt physically sick while watching it. I will say just a content warning. Well, Google it if you want to know content warning. But, like, don't go into this blind if you have a sensitive stomach. That's all I'm going to say. It is, like, the fucking craziest thing I've ever seen. And it's really hard to make me ill. And I felt very ill, so.
I saw this on Max, and I'm like...
You said you didn't watch it.
No, like, I physically saw it
you're
on
like,
Max.
here it is.
And I'm like, oh, well, it's another one.
No, but it's, like, good. It's. I know there's a lot of mediocre
I'm not
ones.
saying that it's not good. It's just... I have to really be in the mood to watch, like, another true crime documentary.
That's fair.
Because there's just so many. And I feel like Netflix made them so schlocky. I have a lot...
This is an HBO one.
Oh, yeah, I have a lot more trust in HBO.
Yeah.
To make something of quality
than
Netflix. But, like, it's even, like, just based off of the poster, it looks kind of, like, and the name of it. Mm-hmm. Because, like, what's the subtitle, like, the cult of, like, mother or something like that?
Yeah, they called it Mother God, I think, is the subtitle. They call her, like, Mom or Mother God.
They call her Mommy.
They didn't call her Mommy, I don't think, but they do call her Mom. Like, it's very odd. I don't know. I think you should check it out, but I don't blame you if you're sick of
I will add it to my list.
In
my ever-growing list as I'm
list.
wrapping up Wednesday after I didn't get around to that for like a year and a half. But I haven't recorded in a while, and I watched so much stuff. So, like, I had to really, like, think about what I wanted to recommend. My new film is The Book of Clarence from James Samuel, who has Lakeith Stanfield playing a man in the age of Jesus who decides that he's going to be a messiah to make money and pay back his debts.
We love a hustler.
And this is such a brilliant mixture of, like, a very unique black voice and an homage to, like, Ben-Hur and Ten Commandments and those kinds of big William Wyler, Cecil B. DeMille kinds of films. And Lakeith Stanfield is fantastic. It has an incredible cast from top to bottom. And I'm just going to sprinkle this in. Benedict Cumberbatch is in it. And when you watch it, you will not believe how he fits into this movie.
Is he Jesus?
I'm not going to say anything.
Oh. Okay, now I have to check this out.
It's a very interesting mix of things. And honestly, it seems like it would just be a straight satire based off the trailers, but there's actually a lot of depth to it. My rewatch of my own films was Up in the Air, which I just did a podcast for Scribe Podcast, and I love Up in the Air. This film from Jason Reitman, starring George Clooney, is like peak George Clooney leading man era, and Vera Farmiga is amazing, Anna Kendrick is great, and it has such a great supporting cast. And it's actually really interesting to watch now from this film from 2009, tackling the idea of going fully remote work.
Oh yeah, that wasn't really like a thing back then.
Yeah, and I'm like, and it's like watching it now post COVID, I'm just like, this is an interesting experience at this point.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend. It's the best $2 I've ever spent. Bought on Black Friday one year for $2. Never heard of it. I'm like, this looks interesting for $2.
Okay.
So good. And I've watched so many things off of my watch list recently, and I still have 1,200 movies on it. But
what? Oh god, I don't know why I'm surprised by that.
But I watched a lot of Japanese films, like mixture of like old samurai films and anime with my wife. And the one that I probably recommend the most is Samurai Trilogy Episode 1, Musashi Miyamoto. So this is a 3-part samurai epic about a man who goes from just being like a soldier turning into like a cult hero and like this really great samurai master.
I thought you didn't like cult movies.
There's a difference between a cult hero and an actual cult.
I know that. I've seen more than one movie, bro.
Brah.
That was such an unattractive face I just made. Okay.
For all the world to see.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And this is starring Toshiro Mifune, who Like, I was kind of shocked this wasn't a Akira Kurosawa film. But I'm really looking forward to checking out the other two. I've seen this Criterion Collection edition so many times, and now I'm like, I finally watched one of them. So I definitely want to get on Criterion because they're cool.
Okay, sounds cool.
And I am a cinephile and must have all the must collect the Criterion. But Paige, thank you so much for coming on and chatting more John Ford with me.
Anytime, Shane.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Review.